All right, so back to the book. He's talking about the things that you can do to keep a unit trained up. Number one, do essential things first. There's not enough time for the commander to do everything. Each commander will have to determine wisely what is essential and assign responsibilities for accomplishment. He should spend the remaining time on near essentials. This is especially true of training. Non-essentials should not take up time required for essentials. What do we call that? We call that prioritize and execute. Next thing, do things right the first time. The commander should not consider his unit ready for battle until it can carry out a plan well the first time. Too often, commanders hold rehearsals of things their unit should be able to do well without rehearsal. I like this because this is like a little bit, there's this mantra in the games about you should do one third planning, 1/3 gear prep, 1/3 rehearsal. We put all this emphasis in the rehearsal, which is awesome, and I 100% believe that. But there's things that you shouldn't have to rehearse, right? And that's what he's saying. There's some things you should just know. You should have some standard operating procedures that you should know. Look, are we going to rehearse them? Yes, we are. But you should know them. You should rehearse them. You shouldn't have to rehearse them. But you should rehearse. I rehearse everything. This practice causes officers and men expecting a dry run or two to pay little attention to initial instructions and to make inadequate preparations. There will be no dry runs in combat. It is good to issue adequate instructions and hold officers and men to them the first time. That's something that I wish I would have learned. Imagine saying, hey, look, I'm going to tell you guys this one time, then we're going to go execute. No rehearsals. Just to get people in the mindset of paying attention and figuring out where your directions and your planning is a shortfall. Because if I can't say, okay, Dave, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go in this building. I'm going to go in this building. You're going to take your squad. You're going to move to here. You're going to move to there. Does everyone understand? All right, we're going to go do it right now in this training exercise with no rehearsals. That will show us the shortfalls of our planning and our communication. It will also show the team shortfalls. And when they don't know what to do, they should raise their hand and say, hey, boss, that doesn't make sense to me right now. Hold on a second. Let me hear that again. I don't understand that part. Practice more than one thing at a time. Okay, so wait a second. Are we going against prioritize and execute? Is that what's happening? No, actually, whenever I see a unit practicing only one thing at a time, I'm reminded of the history paper my son brought home one day. The grammar, construction, and spelling were not good. This is very poor English, I told him. But Dad, he said, I was only being tested in history. Sound training requires that many subjects be skillfully integrated and taught concurrently. This is an excellent time saver in training. And he goes through this, and what he's saying is, look, you got to do multiple things at the same time. And even though prioritize and execute, when you got multiple problems and you can't try and solve them all at the same time, that doesn't mean that you're going to say, hold on a second, we need to move towards the target, but we also need to make communications. We can only do one at a time. No, there's things that you have to do concurrently. And that can include, hey, we've got to move wounded people and we've got to fight a firefight. If we only ever practice just getting in a firefight and just moving people, how do we know how to do both those things at the same time, which you may have to do? So do you have to prioritize and execute? Yes, you do. But guess what? You also have to learn how to do things concurrently. He says a paper integration and training schedule is not efficient. So just like talking about it, well, if we have to move a wounded guy while we're in a firefight, well then we'll just do this, X, Y, Z. No, you have to try it, which is contradictory to rehearsals, right? No, don't do rehearsals. Yes, do rehearsals. A commander should take every opportunity to exploit the effects of integrated training. It is the key to accelerated and intensified unit combat training. In effect, it increases the amount of available training time. Good. Eliminate the administrative habit in training. I am convinced that all commanders should take maximum advantage of field training time to develop correct tactical practices and procedures. We talked about that one last time. Practice dispersion, concealment, and camouflage. The penalty for bad habits and passive measures in air defense warrants special mention. The day when American soldier could be lax about dispersion, concealment, and camouflage is in the past. So, again, how does this apply to everyday life and business? Train how you fight. Train how you fight. Know the status of men and equipment. Check up on those that are absentee from training. Practice maintenance in the field. And he's got little sections about each one of these. Practice sound troop leading procedures. The subject of troop leading procedures and allied techniques requires increased emphasis on tactical exercises. Fundamentals found in field manuals and related publications are worthy of stress. Sound command procedures diligently practiced in all field training will form good habits in the unit commander. Form the checklist habit. Meticulous planning and reconnaissance are required to make sure that every minute in the field will be expended profitably. Checklists for this purpose are a necessary command and staff tool, just as they are for supervising and testing the conduct of training. What do you got?
I got the same thing I keep thinking about every time I hear what he has to say. He keeps repeating, fundamental, sound, realistic. Fundamentals. These are the fundamentals, these are the basic things. All the basic things associated with their job, and being good at those things and training in a realistic scenario. There's a lot. Obviously, General Clark is talking about war. He's recounting his experiences with war. I hear what he's saying is connecting it to war. But the application of these things, as I keep hearing it in my head, hearing what you're saying and thinking about the things I'm thinking about now, if you are in the private sector, anywhere in the private sector, unless you happen to be in one of the rare sectors that's not competitive, and there are almost none. If you are in the American capitalist private sector, you are at war. Your competitors don't want to share space with you. They don't want to cooperate with you to work in harmony. They want to run you over. They want to take all of your clients, all of your market share, and all of your product. They want to take all that from you. And the way you are successful is the exact same things. Your people have to be trained on the fundamentals, on everything that applies to them. And the only way to do that is to find a way to train them realistically that replicates what they're going to deal with in the real world, in their real world. It's just kind of crazy how, while it seems difficult to make the connection to his world, the connection is so straightforward to any world that you're operating in.
You know, I've broached this subject before, and I'm sure there's got to be some kind of scientific or psychological experiment or whatever. But the improvement of your response from a time when you don't know what's going to happen and you haven't practiced it to a time when you do know what's going to happen, you have practiced it, is exponential. It is absolutely exponential. And we see this all the time at Echelon Front when we role play with people.
Totally.
We put someone in a role playing scenario and they say, well, you know, I've got to go talk to this. I got to go talk to my subordinate leader who's got a giant ego. And okay, roll in there and just talk to him. See how that goes. It's going to be a disaster. So you role play. And guess what? The first time you role play, it's a disaster. The second time, it's 10 times better.
Yeah.
And then the third time, it's 15 times better. And then the fourth time, it's 17 times better. But that first look that you get, when you know a little bit of what to expect, man, you are just, you're exponentially more prepared for that situation. And we know when you're in a leadership position and you're going to roll into a meeting where you've got to deliver some bad news to the troops, you know what they're going to say. You know there's 8 responses you're going to get. Why not think through those things? Why not think through those things? You're going to talk to a client that you've disappointed, you've let down, you've made a mistake. You know they're going to have one of 6 different reactions. Why not work through those? Why not have a contingency plan for each one of those 6 things? This will take you 4 minutes to do. It'll take you and I 4 minutes to role play. Maybe it'll take us 5-10 minutes to role play the 6 different responses when I roll into you and I say, hey, Dave, listen, I know we promised you this product on this date. We ran into some hiccups. Here's the mistakes that I made. Here's what we're going to try and do to resolve it. You're only going to be able to say so many different things back to me.
Yeah.
And depending on how I respond, I could either salvage that relationship or I could destroy it. So why would we not train to be prepared for this? There's no reason. There's no excuse for it. It doesn't take a week to train for that situation. It takes 10 minutes.
It does. It takes 10 minutes. If your own brain is the only place where you consider the potential outcomes of that conversation, you are going to miss so many things. If I get one other person sit across from me to answer in any way that they want how I'm going to interact with them, I actually now reveal wow, I didn't expect that. I didn't see that coming. I don't know what to say here. And you also have that other person to just interact with you in a way that helps you anticipate a real response that you won't consider if you do it in your own brain, which is a vacuum. Because what you convince yourself is, oh, this isn't going to be that hard of a conversation. I'm just going to say this, he's going to say that, and everything's going to be fine. The role play scenarios we do, to add one more thing to that, when we do role play, it usually comes right after we've done the initial training where we explain it. He talked about this. That is paper training. Hey, this is what we're going to do. And it makes sense. We think we understand it. In our heads, it resonates. And we can explain these principles and we say, okay, let's role model this. The first role play is always a disaster, even when we just talked about it, because on paper isn't enough. It's not enough. And 3 role plays later, 5 minutes later, they've gone from here to way up here, and they can actually go have that conversation in real life, in real time, with the real person they need to talk to. That 5 minutes of live, realistic, fundamental training is the difference.
This brings up another topic. So I said, hey, look, this individual is only going to have 6 different responses, right? There's a 7th. And the 7th is one that you didn't predict, you didn't understand, and you didn't think could come. And guess what? You can actually train your response for the thing that came completely out of left field. And it might be as simple as if Dave says something to me that I had no anticipation and it doesn't make any sense to me, what am I going to do? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say, if Dave says to me, well, I'll tell you what, not only do we want our money back, I want to take you guys to court. I didn't expect him to say that. Our relationship wasn't that bad. And I said, my response to him, if I don't know what else to say, I'm going to say, Dave, you know what? I need to think about this for a minute. Let me just think about what you're saying because I want to make sure I understand. That right there is a response. And if I'm prepared for it, here's a funny one. When it used to be back in the day, in the days when you would go to get your SEAL trident. You got done with buds, you went to a team, you went through more training, and then you were on probation for 6 months. And then you had to go do an oral board for all the different departments. And you had to go and program the radios and break down the weapons and build demolition charges and, show how to put on a parachute rig and set up a diver. You had to do all these different things, answer all these questions. And one of the things that you learned was, or you better have learned, was when someone asks you a question that you don't know, you better have a response for it. And the response is, Master Chief, I'm not exactly sure of the answer to that question, but I know that it is in the dive manual that I can find down in the dive locker. That's great. That's a response that the Master Chief says, all right, fair enough. We'll go. You better start learning a little bit deeper. But if you go, is it 30 feet for 30 minutes? No, it's not 30 feet for 30 minutes. You try and BS the Master Chief, and you're going to end up getting your ass kicked. So what you do is we did this. We role played the oral board. Me and my friends that had showed up at SEAL Team 1 and we'd gone through this training and now we were getting ready for that oral. We crushed each other in those oral boards. And one of the things that we figured out was, which we got, some of the senior guys said, hey, listen, if you don't know the answer, it's okay. Here's the response. But rehearsing that and being ready for it is infinitely better than no rehearsal, go in there blind and get smacked upside the head with something you didn't expect.
Yeah. That you will talk yourself into that you've got it covered if you're doing this alone. You'll tell yourself, like, this isn't going to be that hard. I got this covered. and you go in there solo, you're going to get crushed.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that other person to put you in a spot and go, wow, hang on a second.